A younger sibling uncovers a dark secret after years of being jealous of their perfect older brother. Jonah Pearson, 24, had spent his life defined by what he wasn't. Isaac. Where Isaac excelled, Jonah failed. Where Isaac smiled, Jonah sulked. And where Isaac was celebrated, Jonah was forgotten. Their small-town upbringing in Glen Cove, a quiet coastal community, did little to hide the obvious favoritism their parents showered upon the elder son. Isaac Pearson, now 28, was everything a parent could want. Accomplished, charming, successful. A Harvard graduate, now a corporate strategist in the city, Isaac was always greeted with pride in his father's eyes. Jonah, on the other hand, never found his place. After dropping out of college, he worked odd jobs, still living in the family's weathered house with their ailing father, Martin. Resentment grew like mold in the walls, silent but toxic. But when Martin passed away on a rainy Tuesday morning, something shifted. Jonah stood alone at the foot of his father's bed, the storm rumbling in the distance, unaware that this death would finally give him the spotlight he craved, not through praise, but through revelation. And in the dusty drawer of an old desk, Jonah would find a sealed envelope that would tear apart everything he thought he knew. Jonah sat on the floor of his father's old study, dust thick in the air and silence heavier than grief. Amid broken pens, yellowed paper, and faded photo albums, he found it. A single white envelope, brittle at the edges. His name was scrawled across the front in his father's trembling handwriting. To Jonah, open only after I'm gone. He hesitated. His father had never written him anything, no birthday cards, no notes of pride, nothing. The man who had spent his whole life praising Isaac had now left Jonah a secret. Hands shaking, Jonah opened it. Inside was a single sheet, dated 15 years ago. The letter wasn't loving, it wasn't apologetic, it was strange. It spoke of a mistake, of something that couldn't be undone. His father begged for forgiveness, though for what he didn't say. And at the bottom were 3 cryptic lines. You must never trust the golden one. He wears the mask better than I ever could. The truth lives beneath the floorboards. Jonah blinked. The golden one, Isaac, was this a dying man's madness, or something far more real? Either way, Jonah had spent a lifetime in the shadow of perfection. Now he had a reason to investigate it. Jonah couldn't sleep. The letter haunted him. The golden one. The mask, the floorboards. He remembered a time years ago when he had asked about the creaking sounds under the old bedroom his brother once occupied. Their father dismissed it as old house nonsense. Now, with the letter burning in his mind, Jonah found himself standing in Isaac's former room at 3 a.m., flashlight in hand. The floorboards looked ordinary, but one panel near the wall was slightly raised. Jonah knelt, heart pounding, and pried it loose. Beneath it was a gap, just big enough to fit a shoebox. And there it was. A metal tin, rusted at the edges, sealed with a strip of red cloth. His mother's old scarf, torn long ago in a family fight nobody talked about. Inside the box were photos, grainy Polaroids, all of the same boy, but not Isaac, not Jonah. A boy Jonah didn't recognize, standing in their backyard playing with Isaac. In some the boy had bruises, in others he seemed to be crying. And then, tucked beneath the stack, a newspaper clipping. Local boy missing, police baffled. The boy's name was Mason Collier. Jonah's blood ran cold. Why was Isaac in every photo with a missing child? Jonah's breath caught as he stared at the photo. Isaac was only 12 in it, but his expression chilled him. Calm, composed, as if nothing were wrong. Mason, however, looked frightened. Jonah flipped the photo, written in faded ink. Before the last time. The walls of Jonah's world started to crack. He took the clipping and photos into the light. The article was from 2006. Mason Collier, 10, had vanished after playing in the park just 2 streets from their house. No leads, no suspects, no body. Jonah had a hazy memory from that summer, his parents whispering in tense tones, Isaac being grounded, though no one ever said why. Jonah had been too young to understand, but now the puzzle pieces began to move. Was Isaac involved? Had Martin known all along? Was that the mistake he wrote about? Jonah felt sick. Everything he'd ever known, his inferiority, Isaac's golden image, was a lie. And suddenly, Isaac's calls and text messages since Martin's death felt menacing, not brotherly. Jonah didn't just want answers now, he needed them. Jonah became obsessed. Mason Collier's name consumed his browser history. Every search brought him deeper into a forgotten mystery. Mason was a quiet child, according to old forums and archived interviews. His mother, Evelyn, had never stopped believing he was taken. Police had found no forced entry, no ransom notes, no signs of struggle. He had vanished in broad daylight. The Collier home was only a 7-minute walk from the Pearson house. Jonah dug deeper into property maps, realizing both houses once backed onto the same wooded trail, one that had since been overgrown and blocked off after a wildfire years ago. Then came the shock. Isaac had been questioned once. Buried in police records, Jonah found a mention. Isaac P. Minor briefly interviewed. No further action taken. How had this been hidden? Jonah stared at the file. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a cover-up. And someone, maybe Martin, maybe both parents, had kept it buried for nearly 2 decades. But Jonah had the letter, the photos, the motive, and now a reason to confront the golden boy himself. Isaac was flying in tomorrow for the funeral. Jonah would be waiting. Isaac arrived dressed in black and wearing his usual disarming smile. His skin flawless, his dark blonde hair slicked back neatly, and his navy trench coat tailored to perfection. He was the very image of grief and grace. Jonah, shaven, in a wrinkled gray hoodie and jeans, looked like a ghost beside him. "Jonah," Isaac said, opening his arms. Jonah didn't move. "We need to talk." Isaac blinked, mask slipping for a fraction of a second before returning. "Of course, but maybe after the service?" Jonah shoved the envelope into Isaac's chest. "I found this, and the box under your floor." Silence. Isaac's hand trembled slightly as he took the letter. He didn't read it. "You shouldn't have done that." There it was, the calmness, the stillness. But underneath, Jonah sensed a tension, a buried truth Isaac had spent years concealing. "You were always curious," Isaac said, voice low, "but curiosity doesn't guarantee survival." Jonah stepped back. The golden boy wasn't just hiding secrets, he was threatening Jonah. That night, Jonah locked his bedroom door for the first time in years. He could still hear Isaac's voice in his head, soft, calm, but layered with something Jonah had never noticed before. Quiet threat. Jonah replayed the encounter over and over. Isaac never denied anything. He never asked what box. He simply said, "You shouldn't have done that." There was something terrifying about how little emotion he showed. Like he wasn't concerned, only mildly annoyed that someone dared look behind the curtain. The next morning, Isaac was back to his perfect self, serving coffee, talking to the funeral director, consoling guests, with tears Jonah knew weren't real. To everyone else, Isaac was a grieving son, but Jonah had seen beneath the golden surface. During a quiet moment, Jonah cornered him in the hallway. "I'm going to the police." Isaac smiled faintly. "With what? Old photos and paranoia. You think they haven't seen this before? Do you know how many times Dad bailed me out? You were too busy sulking to notice." Jonah stared. "You admit it?" "I admit nothing. I manage things, Jonah. That's what the golden child does. And you, well, you play your part in the shadows." And with that he walked away. Jonah needed help, but there was no one left in the family who didn't fall for Isaac's charm. So he turned to the only person who had a reason not to, Evelyn Collier. He found her address through a public records database. She still lived in the same house. Her name never changed. It was a run-down brick home now, overgrown with ivy and haunted by loss. Jonah knocked 3 times. She opened the door slowly. Gray hair, sunken eyes, but a stare as sharp as ever. "Mrs. Collier, I'm Jonah Pearson. Martin was my father. Isaac is my brother." Her eyes darkened. "I know who you are," she said flatly. "You're the brother who disappeared into the wallpaper." Jonah nodded. "I need to talk to you about Mason." Evelyn's hands trembled. "Why now, after all these years?" "Because my father left me a letter. Because I found something, photos, clippings, memories. I think my brother was involved." She stared at him for a long time. "I always knew, but no one believed me. Your family. They were too powerful, too clean. Will you help me?" She stepped back and opened the door wider. "Yes, but you need to see what they buried." Evelyn led Jonah down into a dusty basement filled with labeled boxes. "I documented everything," she said. "The police stopped listening. But I didn't. Inside were old journals, case files she requested through legal loopholes, photos of Isaac and Mason at the local community center, and one particularly damning artifact, a letter Isaac wrote to Mason. "I found this in Mason's backpack," Evelyn whispered. "It was the only thing he had on him that day." The police dismissed it as a school note. Jonah unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was Isaac's. "Don't tell anyone. You promised. Meet me at the trail. No one will get hurt if you just listen." Jonah's stomach turned. It was dated the day Mason vanished. Next, Evelyn handed Jonah a USB drive. "I recorded a conversation between your father and mine, back when he tried to silence me. Martin said something about covering for Isaac to protect the family." Jonah blinked. "You recorded it?" "I never gave it to the police. I knew they'd bury it, but maybe you can use it." He nodded slowly. The golden child had cracks, and now Jonah had something to widen them. But if he went public, he wouldn't just be exposing Isaac. He'd be bringing down the entire Pearson legacy. When Jonah returned home, Isaac was waiting. Not in anger, but with a gift. A wrapped box on the kitchen table. "What's this?" Jonah asked. Isaac smiled coolly, sipping tea. "A peace offering. I know things have been tense." Jonah didn't open it. Instead, he stared at Isaac's face, the same face that had fooled teachers, friends, even their parents. A face Jonah now saw clearly, a mask molded by manipulation. "I visited Evelyn," Jonah said flatly. Isaac's smile barely wavered. "Did you?" "She has proof. Letters, audio." For the first time, Isaac's fingers twitched. He stood slowly. "And what are you planning to do with that, Jonah? Go to the police, a news station?" "I haven't decided. But whatever I do, I'm not stopping." Isaac walked around the table, stopping inches from his brother. "You always envied me. That's what this is, isn't it? You weren't the golden child. So now you want to destroy what I built." Jonah stared back. "You didn't build it. You buried it." Isaac leaned in. "Careful, little brother. You're not the only one who knows how to dig." And just like that, Jonah realized something chilling. Isaac wasn't scared of exposure. He was preparing to strike. Jonah couldn't sleep. His mind ran through Evelyn's archives, his father's cryptic warnings and Isaac's quiet threats. Every time he closed his eyes, Mason's bruised face flashed before him. The boy in the photos was screaming for justice, and Jonah knew he was the only one who could deliver it. The next morning, Jonah drove out to the old wooded trail behind their childhood home, now a patch of dying trees and broken fencing. Armed with a shovel and a printed copy of the property layout from 2006, Jonah wandered into the dense brush. He reached the spot-marked clearing on the map Evelyn gave him. There he found a large depression in the ground, just enough to suggest something had once been buried or perhaps dug up. The soil was softer than the rest. He knelt and began to dig. An hour later, his hands blistered and face slick with sweat, he hit something hard. It was a box, plastic, old. He pried it open. Inside, a child's jacket, blue with white stripes. A Game Boy cartridge. A small bracelet engraved with MC. Jonah fell back in horror. This wasn't just circumstantial anymore. This was physical evidence, and someone else knew he had found it, because as he stood, his phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "You really should have left it buried." Jonah froze. His breath caught in his throat as he stared at the message. The number was untraceable, just a string of digits he didn't recognize. He spun around. Were their eyes watching from the woods? Was Isaac here, waiting? He snapped a photo of the box's contents and quickly rebury it. He couldn't carry it, not yet. Not without alerting Isaac to how far he'd gone. When he returned home, the front door was ajar. Jonah stepped inside cautiously. The lights were off, but the scent of cologne hung in the air, Isaac's signature brand. On the kitchen table was the unopened gift box. It was no longer wrapped. Inside, a single chess piece. The king. Jonah swallowed hard. This wasn't just psychological warfare. It was a message, a challenge. Isaac had always loved chess. It was the only game they played as kids where Jonah could never win. Now the game had moved off the board. Jonah called Evelyn. "I need to get this to the police." "No," she replied. "Not yet. If you go too early, he'll spin it. You need one final piece, the one your father hinted at in the letter." Jonah remembered the line. "He wears the mask better than I ever could." "What mask?" Jonah ransacked the house, searching for anything else his father may have left behind. Something that would explain the final clue in the letter. Hours passed. Closets were emptied, drawers overturned, and still nothing. Until he entered his father's bedroom. Behind the bookshelf was a small latched door Jonah had never seen. It opened to reveal a crawl space lined with old files and videotapes, dozens of them, labeled in Martin's handwriting. He chose one labeled Isaac 2003 to 2007. He plugged the tape into the dusty VHS player that hadn't been touched in years. What played chilled him to the core. It was Isaac. Home videos, birthdays, family dinners. But Martin hadn't just recorded events, he had secretly recorded moments of Isaac alone. In one clip, Isaac sat in his room, staring into the mirror, rehearsing lines over and over. "I'm sorry, Jonah, I didn't mean to." Then again, "I'm sorry, Jonah, I didn't mean to," each time more convincing. Then Isaac smiled and began to laugh. Another clip showed him placing a dead bird in Jonah's backpack. Another, manipulating a crying Jonah into apologizing for something he didn't do. Jonah realized the truth. Isaac wasn't just manipulative, he was a practiced liar, a sociopath, and Martin had known. Jonah waited until Isaac returned late that night. He sat in the living room, tape in hand. The screen paused on Isaac's grinning childhood face. Isaac entered, loosened his tie, and froze when he saw the paused frame. "You've been busy," Isaac said calmly. "I know what you are." Isaac walked over slowly, his expression unreadable. "You think I'm a monster, but let me ask you, Jonah, do you feel better now playing hero, pretending any of this matters?" Jonah stood, fury in his eyes. Mason mattered. A pause, then Isaac's smile flickered. He was weak. "I told him not to cry." Jonah's blood went cold. "You did it," he whispered. Isaac's eyes met his. "And if you expose me, the whole family name goes down with it. Our father was a coward. He cleaned up after me again and again, but you could be smart. You could be my shadow like always, or burn everything down. Jonah stared at the man he once admired, the brother he'd envied, and he finally saw him, not the golden boy but the hollow shell behind the mask. He didn't answer, but he knew what he had to do. Jonah uploaded everything, the tapes, the photos, the letter, the audio Evelyn recorded. He encrypted it all and sent copies to multiple journalists, lawyers, and one detective Evelyn had trusted for years. The story was no longer just his to carry. Then he called a press contact. "There's something you need to see. My name is Jonah Pearson, and my brother is not who you think he is." The next day, the story exploded across headlines. Pearson legacy tarnished. Dark truth behind Glen Cove's golden sun. Isaac's face was everywhere. Jonah expected rage, revenge, but what came was worse: silence. Isaac didn't come home that night. Or the next. His phone went dead. No one could reach him. And then Evelyn called. "There's been a break-in in my house. The archives, they're gone." Jonah stared at the wall, heart racing. He had exposed the truth. But the golden child wasn't finished. Isaac had vanished, and Jonah knew. The final game had just begun. As the news spread, Glen Cove fell into chaos. Some townspeople defended Isaac, refusing to believe the golden boy was capable of such darkness. Others stared at Jonah with wide, guilty eyes, shocked they'd never noticed the signs. The Pearson name, once synonymous with pride, was now tangled in scandal. Businesses removed their plaques honoring Isaac. The mayor released a statement distancing himself. Even Isaac's former company launched an internal investigation. But it wasn't over. Jonah remained under police protection while Evelyn stayed at a friend's out of town. The break-in at her house hadn't just been about destruction. It was surgical. Whoever did it knew what to take and what to leave. Isaac hadn't fled in panic. He had a plan. Then, 2 nights later, Jonah received an email from an anonymous address. It contained only one sentence. "You know where it ends. Come alone." Attached was a GPS location, an abandoned cabin in the woods outside Glen Cove. Jonah recognized it. It was their old childhood retreat, a place where games were played, lies were told, and perhaps the truth would finally finish what the past had begun. Jonah didn't tell anyone. Not the police, not Evelyn. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about closure, about survival, about finally facing the shadow that had loomed over him for 24 years. He arrived just after sunset. The woods were quiet, eerily still. The cabin stood crooked and rotting beneath a canopy of dying leaves. The door creaked open on its own. Inside sat Isaac, still clean, still composed, wearing a pressed black shirt and slacks, hair neat, expression calm as if waiting for a dinner guest. "You came," he said. Jonah stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I had to," Jonah said. "This ends tonight." Isaac gestured to the table. "Sit. Let's talk." Jonah didn't. Isaac leaned forward. "You've always misunderstood me. I never hated you. I just knew you couldn't handle the truth. You were weak. I was a child," Jonah hissed, "and you were a predator." Isaac's smile returned, hollow. "No, I was brilliant, and you were my mirror. The one thing I never needed." Jonah pulled out a recorder and placed it on the table. Isaac's eyes flicked down. "You think a recording matters now?" Jonah pressed play. What Isaac didn't know, it was already transmitting live to the world. Isaac's composure shattered in an instant. He lunged across the table, knocking the recorder to the floor. But it was too late. The audio streamed to Jonah's hidden phone, broadcasting through an active journalist channel. The world was listening. The walls were closing in. "You ruined it," Isaac screamed, his voice a twisted echo of the calm man everyone knew. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Jonah backed away, his heart pounding. "I saved someone. Maybe just one person, maybe more." Isaac's face contorted. "You think exposing me makes you a hero? No one will remember you. They'll only remember that you were my brother." He lunged again, but Jonah was ready this time. He struck Isaac with the flashlight, sending him sprawling. Gasping, Jonah called the police with trembling fingers. Within 15 minutes, sirens blared in the distance. Red and blue lights painted the trees as Isaac sat slumped against the cabin wall, blood trickling down his temple, still smiling. "You always wanted to be the star," he whispered. "Now you are." As the officers cuffed him, Jonah stood silently. He had uncovered the truth, but at what cost? The trial was swift. The evidence was irrefutable. Between the hidden videos, the letter, Evelyn's archive, and Isaac's own recorded confession, the court convicted him on multiple charges: tampering with evidence, obstruction, and being a prime suspect in Mason Collier's disappearance. Though they never found Mason's body, the case was now classified as homicide. Isaac Pearson was sentenced to life in prison without parole. The town's reaction was mixed. Some mourned the fall of their hero. Others couldn't look Jonah in the eye without guilt. Jonah moved out of the Pearson house. It was auctioned and later demolished, leaving only the land behind, a metaphor, he realized, for rebuilding. Evelyn finally found peace. She held a memorial for Mason with the town's reluctant support. Jonah stood beside her, no longer invisible, no longer second best. Just a man who had finally spoken up. He never sought fame. He only wanted the truth. But truth, he had learned, never comes clean. It drags everything with it: love, family, pride, and even memory. And yet, he would choose it again. Years passed. Jonah became an advocate for families of unsolved crimes. He traveled, spoke at conferences, and built a foundation in Mason Collier's name. Every time he looked in the mirror now, he saw a man he could finally respect. The world remembered the fall of Isaac Pearson, but they also began to remember the rise of Jonah Pearson, not as the golden boy, but as the one who stood up. The shadows of his childhood didn't haunt him anymore. He had walked through them, uncovered their secrets, and lived to tell the tale. Still, some nights he'd wake up with a start, thinking he heard Isaac's voice or footsteps behind him. Trauma, they said. Echoes of what was, but deep down Jonah knew something else. Truth doesn't die. It waits. Sometimes beneath floorboards, sometimes behind a smile, and sometimes in the heart of the brother you trusted most. If you were captivated by Jonah's journey, don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling stories just like this one. There's always another secret waiting to be uncovered.